Hello, you're back with Dave and Tim at the Single Malt Review as we reach the conclusion of this We Drinks by the Dram Island Whiskey tasting set.
Yeah, I can't actually remember when we started this one, sometime way earlier in the start of the year, so just been too much to get through. But not forgotten is the final entry, and it's a pretty important one whiskey-wise.
Yeah.
It is none other, bum bum bum, Talisker. Talisker, the unassuming whiskey, which is important for a number of reasons. It's, of course, the only distillery on the Isle of Skye, which is quite nice, I'm sure. Much like the Isle of Mull and the Isle of all sorts around there. Most of them have a distillery. Arran.
This is supposed to be 10-year-old Talisker, bottled at 45.8% ABV.
A curious strength, made up just by Talisker, and adhered to just by Talisker, because they have used it forever, and I don't know why they picked such an odd strength, but I'm sure there's some gaff about how it's important to something, but take that with a grain of salt. But speaking of grain of salt, Talisker is possibly the premier maritime whiskey, although it's probably, aficionados would dispute that. I think it's the premier maritime whiskey. This is a salty old bugger here, and its reach is longer than you might think. Talisker by Talisker doesn't get out a great deal. It's part of the Classic Malt. It's perfectly available, pretty jolly expensive these days, as everything peated is, even at 10 years old. And God help you if you want anything older than that. That's available, but yeesh, never mind. Maybe give the private jet a rest that week to afford that one. Where you're probably more used to tasting Talisker, whether you're aware of it or not, is in Johnny Walker Black Label. Because as a Diageo stable malt, it is Talisker and Caol that provide the peat for Black Label and the even peatier Double Black. So there you go. You might have had Talisker you didn't even know.
Yeah.
What does the wee card say?
Well, the nose, according to Drinks by the Dram's tasting notes, the nose is going to offer thick, pungent smoke, notes of kippers, seaweed, apple peels. It is fresh and fragrant.
Right, so far so good.
Oh yeah, it's a very Caol style, greasy, tarry,
it's
dark and jetty smoke.
Where it diverges for me is there's none of the smoky bacon you get with
Yeah.
Caol, and there's a lot less of the citrus. It's almost like, to get really stupid about it, it's like if you crossbred Caol and Bowmore, because there's some of that mineral coal smoke flintiness of Bowmore.
Yeah.
But there is the quite barbecuey, quite iodine, punchy savouriness of Caol.
To give it a narrative or paint a mental picture, I'm imagining someone lighting a cigar after unloading a catch of very greasy fish on a cold winter's morning at the docks.
There you go.
I've never done any of those things, aside from smoking a cigar. I've done once or twice, but otherwise that's the kind of like the picture that's been painted in my head.
Yes, indeed. Colour-wise, this has been coloured up the wazinga. This is very, very dark for not 100% bourbon, but a very, very bourbon-dominant whiskey. They are having a bit of a laugh with this one, but never mind.
And that kind of colour is not impossible after 10 years, but...
Oh no, certainly not impossible, but they may have shot themselves in the foot by releasing an 8-year-old special edition recently, which I've gotten wind of and gotten a taste of even. Not a bottle, because it's absurdly expensive for an 8-year-old, but never mind, so goes peated whiskey. And that one is just about as pale as you can imagine. So yeah, this one's several shades darker than the truth.
Well, and on the tongue, on the palate, where you should expect to be full-bodied with huge plumes of smoke and volcanic peppery peat. Intense.
Love a huge plume. But yeah, again, can't really argue. Talisker is... I don't know if I'd be able to pick it, but aficionados will say Talisker is one of the more guessable of the peated whiskies. Charles MacLean famously described a chili pepper catch in the back of the throat as the tell for Talisker. And
that is a wonderfully rubbery, sulphurous kind of a peat. It's very tangy. I'm from a rather geothermal part of New Zealand, so I'm used to the smell of sulphur and other such things, and this is just bringing back memories of home, plus a bit of sort of burnt rubber as well.
Rubber,
probably
yeah.
grubby, dirty, black roiling smoke kind of a sensation. But also, curiously, a hint of seaweed. There's some good old Japanese nori in here.
Yeah, definitely burning rubber, tire fire type stuff. I've got to stop looking at the phone. Look at my idiot face. Look at the phone. We've got to take that phone down. It's we put it near the camera, but look like yeah, stupid.
Tim is focusing on our monitor and not on our camera lens. I'm probably doing the same. Apologies.
We'll get there, folks. We'll get there. Technology kicking and screaming into the future. So we go, but we're getting the hang of it. But this one, yeah, it's pretty full on. It's not a light-bodied whiskey by any means.
I'm not getting that chilly heat though, not the burn on the throat that some heavily peated Islay whiskey provides. It's the intensity of the smoky flavour, but not the intensity of the punishing mouth and throat feel. Speaking of, the finish we should be looking for is long with barley and malt. Apparently, it is a 4-word tasting note: long finish, barley, malt.
All right, they got lazy with that last one. I was on board, but then say a malt whiskey tasted both barley and malt. It's like, yes.
The Department of Redundancy Department has called.
There's probably a name for that, but never mind. We'll give them a pass.
What I'm getting on the finish is just a good kind of that taste of the smell of a puncture repair kit. If you're a bicycling persuasion,
that's a good one. That's a very good one.
Rubber and glue.
How to slot this in? There's a richness to this, as I think how it differentiates itself from Islay's typical stuff. There's a richness and a fruit, which is not as common.
Yeah, I have to gate crash your thoughts here and say adding water has brought out a very curious sweet counterpoint, which was not so prominent before. It's just a good amount of of sort of barley sugar sweetness, a hint of fruit, a little bit of zest even, which was not so even before, and it harmonizes nicely with that completely kind of almost contrary grubby smoke.
To hone that in a bit more, I'm getting orange marmalade and some sort of stewed stone fruits with it. Sweet, but has a tang, has a bite to it, which I think suits it rather well. I think, despite saying this is a bourbon dominant whiskey, and it still is a bourbon dominant whiskey in terms of makeup, the sherry is making itself known here for sure. There is some sherry wood influence here, and I like it. I quite like it. So that's Talisker. I mean, that's Talisker. Talisker has been the same in terms of whiskey that has maintained a sort of a continuity of character. Talisker is really one of the greats. They have been just sitting there making Talisker and only Talisker for ages. They have the not quite Talisker, the Talisker Storm and the Talisker No Age Statement and the Talisker Duty Free and yada yada yada. But they're all variations on a theme, and I think Talisker 10 has just been Talisker 10 just about. Done it again. Hate myself for this video. Anyway, we'll get there in the end. Talisker 10 has been Talisker 10, and ideally will be Talisker 10 Immortal. It's just one of those ones. I should get better at picking it since it's supposed to be so pickable. But anyway, scores. What we've been orbiting around, what we've been waiting for, keeping you waiting. I rather like this. I think this is very good. For a 10-year-old, albeit an expensive 10-year-old that we're not really supposed to consider price, I think this one's pretty well up around an 89, if you ask me. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in a similar ballpark. It's been so long since I tried Talisker 10 on its own. Probably, 2010 maybe, the last time I just sampled it because of
that's a
pressures of time and money. It is good to revisit it. I'm getting so much more out of it now than I did at the time. Enjoying it a lot. It is a kind of like, well, it's one of the classic malts for a reason. And it's an 88 pointer for me.
Excellent. Yeah, so we're good. We're in sync this week. So we're firing on there. Yeah. It is one of the truly classic malts. Cardhu, it's like Singleton, get lost, not classic enough. Talisker, definitely in Hall of Fame for sure.
You will pick it from a lineup.
Anyway, hope we're not picking us from a lineup anytime soon. Otherwise, we will be back. Sláinte.